everybody, Caleb here, and today I've got a nice Guild guitar to work on. This is a 1975 Guild F50R in natural. It's a really nice guitar. This is actually the second of 3 Guilds I have to work on. However, you'll probably see this one first, as I'm waiting on some dry time on the first one, and this one shouldn't take me too long. I don't think this needs a whole lot of work. It's really just looking it over and making sure everything looks good on it and as playable as it can be. It's currently tuned open B, which is not a tuning I am very familiar with, but it sounds pretty good, especially in that lower register. But I'm going to have to tune this up to standard to get good measurements on it. Beyond that, I don't think it needs a whole lot, just good setup things, and I'm going to make sure it's nice and clean. So I'll go ahead and set her down and we can get started on looking at where this thing is. So I'm doing things a little out of my usual order on this one. I want to do some inspecting on this before we get going on a setup. You know, I've pretty much just been asked to look this thing over and make sure everything's doing good. And I'm noticing, and it's a little dirty on the top, so I'm going to go ahead and just clean that up while we're here. I've got a wet cloth. I wet it in a bowl with some lightly soapy warm water. Just trying to knock off any of this gunk. And you don't want to leave any water on your finish, so make sure you dry it. This guitar smells like an old guitar. They have a very distinct smell. Once you've dealt with a few of them, you start to recognize that smell again. It's maybe a little must and a little dust and some aged wood. So this guitar smells like an old guitar, which is a very good sign for tone usually. Looking better already. I could actually feel the difference. I think you can hear it there. So as I rub my fingers across here, it doesn't really make any noise. But then down here, that's the difference between where I've cleaned and where I need to clean. We'll try and dry this thing off. And now it's quiet on both sides because we knocked off all that junk. Cool. So while I've got the back out, I'm noticing the binding is maybe just starting to come unstuck in the waist. The third Guild that I have to work on, which I haven't started on yet, has the binding come entirely loose at the waist, which is why I really decided to take a close look at it. And I can see that there's starting to be a gap here. And I think it's mostly where the plastic has shrunk over time. The Guild with the loose binding is much older than this one. I'm not sure that it's actually a gap as I look at it. It might just be that it's shrunk and the plastic shrinks as it gets older and it's lower than the back. I think it's actually okay. Just making sure we're all clean here. It's looking very good. Just this side now. Alright, so we're doing pretty good on clean now. Just noticing a little spot. Maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't. It's looking really good. I noticed the end pin has been plugged. It's not very tight either. You can probably see there's a circle. I think it's a mahogany plug. By the look of that, I would say that at some point this has had a pickup in it. You know, it's a fairly large hole. You can see that this does not cover it all the way up. I would say at some point there was a pickup in here and that was plugged and had this end pin put in. That would be my guess. That may not be true. It may have just had the world's largest end pin. It's hard to say. I'll go ahead and pull this saddle out of here. And there's a shim under the saddle, so that's always a good sign. So we're probably going to end up making a new saddle for this. One piece and no shims makes for a much better tone because you have all one piece connected from the top to the bottom. There's actually still what looks like an under saddle pickup in there. I think I'm going to, yep. Here's the cable for it. It's just been cut. Well, I was going to say that I'm going to call the customer and see what he wants to do about this, but since it's just been cut, I'm just going to remove it. So we'll make a new saddle for this that fits the whole height, and that'll actually help the tone because you don't have all these separate pieces. You have direct saddle to bridge contact. So I'm glad that we took this apart. I get to see that. What I think I'm going to do next is actually get my mirror out and look on the inside and make sure it's all looking good on the inside. Now this is the part that's hardest to show you because you can't see where I'm looking, but the fastest way for me to actually do an internal inspection is just with a mirror. Look around, look for anything broken or anything that looks loose. I am not too far off saying that bridge plate has been replaced. It looks very large, very thick. It's rosewood. No, it's just the bevel on it. It's not super thick, but it is thicker than I usually see them. Especially in stock guitars. That may be just the way Guild did it. I'm not super familiar with the Guilds. But it looks like a very strong bridge plate. It could be original. I wouldn't be too surprised. There's something in there. Looks like a piece of paper. There's a card from where I assume this particular customer bought this guitar. Was floating around in the inside. I'm not going to show it to you because it's got an address and a phone number, but it came from New Hope Guitar Traders. Very interesting. I think it's actually looking good on the inside. Something I thought I felt was a little bit of a belly bulge. As I was laying my arm across here, I'll go ahead and check that real quick. Yeah, it's got one, and it's a little more than quite a bit more than one would need. If it's not causing a problem, then it's okay. That bridge plate is awful thick for that to be happening. Let me feel up in there. Make sure these braces aren't loose. It doesn't feel like it. Well, that seems to be okay. It's just got a little bit of a bulge to it. Now we'll check the bridge to make sure it's not coming up. I'm just taking a piece of paper here and I'm going to try to slide it. I'm going to try to slide it underneath the bridge. be honest, there are a few spots where it starts to go under, but I don't think it's worth, well, I don't think it's worth spending any time on because it really doesn't go under there any significant distance. You know, in the future, this may be something to watch. So that's what I'll basically tell the customer is keep an eye on this bridge because it has started to lift in the back, but it's such a small amount at this point, it's not worth pulling the bridge off and trying to reglue it down. And it may never get any worse. So that's looking not bad. With no string tension, the angle is not great. Well, let me get a longer straight edge. It's not terrible. It does clear it. I mean, it does work its way over, but it's not a great neck angle. It may be close enough, though. We'll really be able to tell once we tune it up. So I am starting to look at this fretboard here, and I actually can definitely see the binding is coming loose in a few spots. This binding on the fretboard is really, really thin. Just making sure it's not coming loose in any other spots, and there it is. It's loose right there. Done broke it off, but it's okay. It goes back on, you can hardly tell. I'm gonna glue this down first thing. I don't want to lose any pieces of binding, so I'll go ahead and get some binding tape out and we'll glue this back down. This piece right here came all the way off, and there's a piece right here. I think you can hear it. It's loose. I'll get that glued back on there, and then we're going to keep going on with our inspection here. So I'm going to be using this canopy glue. This is Formula 560 canopy glue. It's made by Zap. There's a link in the description for this, as well as pretty much all the other stuff I use. It takes you to the Amazon page where you can buy some if you wanted some. It works really good for plastic to wood. It's for like canopies on model airplanes, the ones that they actually fly. It's almost a latexy glue. When it dries on stuff you don't want it on, like on finish or on your hands even, it kind of becomes rubbery. It works really good for this binding, but it's also really easy to clean off of stuff you don't want it on. You can kind of just roll it up, kind of like a plasticky, rubbery substance. Of course, while it's wet, it is water cleanup as well. This brown tape is made for this job. You kind of attach it to the binding you're sticking on and then stretch it over. It helps hold everything into place while the glue dries. Alright, that's looking really good. When that dries, I doubt you'll ever be able to tell it came off. Now we'll try and get this spot here glued up. Well, it came off, and that's okay. It's probably going to be easier to get a sufficient amount of glue in there that way. Same thing, just taping it down so it doesn't move, and it gives it some inward pressure, kind of like clamping it. You can tell that it pushes in on the binding because as you pull that tape over, it pushes out some glue. So you have some actual squeeze out, which is always a good sign when you're trying to glue something up. All right, that's looking good. We'll give that some time to set up. It takes, let's see. This says drying time for handling is 3 hours, so it's going to take a little while. I may keep going on cleaning up some things. The headstock is still really dusty, but I probably won't film anymore until I'm ready to take this off so I can actually handle it and make sure I'm not going to peel anything important off. So I'll see you in at least 3 hours. So it's been quite a bit of time later, and the binding is dried all the way. I've gone ahead and taken all that tape off, and I used a little wet cloth to kind of wipe down, take off all that excess or squeeze out glue. You really want that to be as clean and smooth as you can get it, because that's right where your hand rubs. Now, as I've been looking at this fretboard, I am starting to have a suspicion that maybe it's had some work done. You can see right here there's a chip out of this fret. I almost wonder, this makes me think this fret has been out. And of course this would be the fret you would pull if you were going to pull the neck. Beyond that, you can kind of see right here that it almost looks like someone has removed the fretboard extension at one point all the way up through there. It looks like that kind of seam that you would get from a tool. So I almost wonder, it's looking like maybe the neck has been pulled on this. I don't really see any other signs that the neck has been pulled on this. You know, it looks pretty good. I wonder if the neck has already been removed once on this. It's kind of a bummer if it has, that the neck angle isn't better than it is, because it's really not great. So I want to start thinking about neck straightness here. This is without tension, so I'll just go ahead and look at it. It is sitting relatively flat without tension. It's actually not perfectly flat. I'm going to go ahead and flatten that out before I start looking at the frets. In my opinion, it should be at least flat with no tension. So we'll go ahead and just snug this up. So I think towards the beginning of this video, I said that I don't have a whole lot of experience with gilds, but now that I'm taking the truss rod cover off of here, I'm remembering that they don't go on the way that I would initially think they go on, with the wide end at the bottom. They go on with the wide end at the top. And now I'm remembering that and going, oh yes, I've worked on a gild before. I don't remember when it was, but I remember thinking about this truss rod cover being, or looking backwards. All right, so I'm going to need a tool. This is a little tight. Generally, if it's so tight you can't turn it, stop turning it. It wasn't really that far out. Oh, that's definitely an improvement. I'm happy with that. I'm going to say that's flat. So now we can actually look at the frets here, see if there are any high frets. Worry about that now. There's a little rock there. There too. Those are pretty solid. Honestly, past the first 4 frets, it's rock solid. No rocking at all. So I may do a really, really light leveling focused in these high area. Obviously, you have to even it out across the whole board. You can't just lower these frets, because then that's going to make these high in reference to this. So you kind of have to, I can focus in this area and work it out into the rest of the board, which is probably what I'll do. I could probably use it just to make sure it's as perfect as I can get it. So we may as well take care of this pretty quick. It shouldn't take me very much. Oh yeah, I can feel that rocking. That's probably just about all she needs. That second fret's a little high. Alright, I think it's looking good. Now really quickly, I'll just crown those frets and we can keep on going. This is 600 sandpaper I'm starting with. 600 is enough to knock the file marks out of the metal frets. It's not really enough to shape the wood. I mean, it would be if I sat here for a long enough time and kept going at it, but it really just starts to polish the frets and smooths them. There's not really any shaping going on with the 600. Next we'll take some 1200. And I am doing all the frets because I'm going to go ahead and just polish all the frets back up to a really high polish. So after we're done with the 1200, I'm going to start with my polishing pads. These go up to a really high grit. The numbers that they say on them are kind of a proprietary grit. It's not the same as sandpaper. And at this point, I've rubbed the numbers off of the faces. So I started marking them on the ends with Sharpie, with basically tally marks. So it goes 1 through 5 or 6. I never really remember. So I start with 1. I start polishing them out. I really do prefer, you know, kind of a more sanding, a dry method as to a, you know, a wet polish. I just think it's easier, and with a little elbow grease you can get it done a lot faster. Now I'll go through and clean up the fingerboard really quickly. I'll just do that with a very sharp razor blade. The final thing we'll do for this fingerboard is actually oil it again. That'll put all the color back in it. It's going to look like a brand new board. I'm going to be using the Be Good wood oil, as I always use. And there we go. That's looking really good. I'm going to give the bridge a little wipe down as well. It's slightly off camera, so you can't really see it, but I'll give that raw wood a little wipe down with the oil. Make it match. That's looking really good. So now we'll use a dry cloth and wipe off any excess. And that darkens that wood back up. Gives it a very nice color, evens it all out, and when the frets are perfect, nice and polished, we're good on the fingerboard. I actually believe the next step will be make a new saddle for this, but as it's getting late tonight, I think I'm going to put that off till tomorrow, So I guess we'll pick this back up first thing tomorrow morning.